Hello and welcome to our short video on how to install the NCP management server and connect it to an NCP exclusive remote access client. First, you want to make sure you have a working configuration with one of the VPN clients connecting to your SRX. If this works, enter the IP address of the management server. In the profile, you find that under Connection and Management Server. As soon as you've this done, we'll move on to the actual installation. You can install it on Windows Server or Linux server. It requires a database to connect, so in this case we're just going to install a MySQL database with a MySQL Odbc connection. You can use whatever database you have in your enterprise right now. If you don't have any database server, you can just install a free database and it's going to work fine. In this case, we're just going to go with MySQL to get it up and running. During the installation of MySQL, it requires you to enter a couple of information, just like what's the password and what do you want to install exactly. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. After the installation is done of the database server, we need an Odbc connection, so I'm just going to install the MySQL Odbc driver on this system. We need to create a dedicated database for the NCP management server, so I'm just going to create a database within MySQL real quick. No specific requirements, we just need a database basically. When this is done, we can move forwards to the real installation of the management server. There are different tools. First, we install the executable of the management server on the Windows system. You just follow the instructions in the wizard to do the installation. One of the first steps is going to be connecting it to the database. So it brings you a pop-up and tells you add a new Odbc connection, and you just follow the steps, enter your credentials to how to actually connect to it and which database you want to use, and then the installer will continue. Choose the Odbc driver in the little NCP pop-up and enter the credentials. Click on test, so you want to make sure that it works, and if it works, just click apply, and the installation is going to continue and finish. After this is done, we're going to install the management console, which is the graphical interface. I'm going to install it in Windows 10 here, on the same system where my client is. The management console is the graphical interface. You can access the management server. It's just a little tool which runs on your desktop system and you can access it. It's just way easier than actually have it running on the server itself. Of course, you can also install it on the Windows server itself. After the installation is done, we're going to open it up the first time and connect to the management server. To connect, you only need your IP address, and basically the administrator is administrator. The first time you're going to connect, it requires you to enter a password. After this is done, we can now upload our plugins. Plugins are specific what your environment basically requires. In this case, we're just going to install all plugins so we can get a good overview of what the management server is capable of. To install the plugins, you just double click it and follow the instructions, which is nothing else than enter the IP address of the management server as well as your username and your password. And the username is usually administrator, and the password is the password we just set before in the management console. You have to do that for each different plugin. Please keep in mind you only have to do that once during the installation. After that, it's basically set up. You don't need to do it anymore. After this is done, you go in the management console on management server plugins, and you can enable plugins for different user groups. We just enable all plugins for all different user groups. You can differentiate that depending on who is actually connecting to the management server, which of your IT administrators. You can find more detailed information about the entire management system in the configuration guide for the NCP management server, which is available on our website. It gets more into detail how you can actually configure it and what you need to take care of, but this video gives you a good description how you can actually make it work within a couple of minutes. So after this is done, we can see on the left side we have a couple of configuration parameters, like we can configure clients, different groups, firewall settings, and also PKI stuff if you want to use certificates. First thing we want to do, import licenses on edit activation keys, and you can just import the license file you received by our licensing team. After this is done, it will show up and gives you an overview how many licenses there are available. Let's try to import a first configuration. So we want to create a template, and we just created it out of the working configuration we use. The configuration of the VPN client is stored in a file called the NCP phone.cfg file, which you find in the installation folder of the VPN client. Just import it, give the template a name, and you will see it imports all configuration parameters you've set before in the VPN client, so you can have one VPN client configured and then roll it out to all your different users with a simple couple clicks. There we have the information, what has been imported. One of the first things we need to do, we need to actually adjust the product type, so we're using the NCP exclusive client, and we also want to automatically distribute license keys and restore that, and that's basically fine. We also need to create a software update list. Software update list defines what is actually rolled out to the VPN client. In this case, we only want to roll out configuration. Basically, it includes the configuration, the license information. You can roll out certificates and software updates and multiple other information, as you can see here. But in this case, we only want to do the client configuration. After this is done, we tie the software update list to the client template, and then we're basically done with the client template. Now we want to create multiple users on the system. I'm going to create two on this system, like user 1 and user 2, so you can actually see how it works. The wizard is just asking for a couple information, like literally username, password. Everything else is going to be pulled out of the template, so you don't need to enter any information about the VPN itself, just username and password. And you can even skip the password part if you don't want that. After this is done, do a right click and say create client configuration. Basically means now it's ready to roll out. If we now connect with our VPN client, it's going to download the new configuration and also the license. As we can see, there's going to be a little pop-up. You can hide the pop-up if that's required, but it usually gives you a good indication that something just happened. So as soon as the VPN is established, the client tries to reach the management server and downloads the information. You can see on help license that the VPN client has received a new license, so that's cool, and you can also see its license. In the management server, you can actually check on info if the client has been connected to the management server or not. It also gives you an overview like what happened the last action, which version is used out there, and information like that.